Call me old man Wade.
Damn you, old man!
Wait.
Old ass man.
Shut up, old man. You smell like fart.
No!
Old man.
He's so old, he got a podcast on cassette.
Fuck, you're old.
Damn it, Wade.
In Mississippi, something like that I saw.
And
Which
welcome
is the
to the Old
smallest of
Man
any
Wade
state in
Show.
the
I am
country.
your host, the God of Stub and the Lord of Laughter, Old Man Wade. And me and Supa Woke and Brandon have been talking about just the random things about the idea of where we live and the differences in racism and why things are racist and why there are certain places you can live and have this misconception of, states. And Brandon happens to live in a very southern state. Do you care where I tell him where you? If I tell him where you live at?
Okay, I live in Texas.
He lives in Texas. He lives in Dallas, Texas. Me and Supa Woke
Dallas.
live in Dallas, Texas. Me and Supa Woke live in Boston, Massachusetts, where we have a debate on which one is a more racist place. And as much as it pains me to say this, is Supa Woke is right when it comes to the racism that people experience in that. Because if you lived in the inner city in Boston, you would assume that Boston was predominantly black because you don't see a lot of black people in actual Boston. But the problem is like people who live in certain places, they assume that because you live in Massachusetts, it's always Boston. Like people think that Worcester is Boston, and people in Boston will go, "Yeah, no, it's actually not." But I just hit record on this specifically because we were having this really good conversation about this, and I think that people need to hear, specifically on racism, and specifically on that. And Brandon brought up a really good point about, I'm not sure if it was Brandon or Javi, but brought up a point about a place being racist.
Recording in progress.
Specifically because there are more black people in a specific place. And Supa Woke, I'd like you to elaborate more on what you were talking about before, about how when you went to school in Michigan, and how close it was to the birthplace of the Ku Klux Klan.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because as a black Bostonian, you do experience racism. I mean, we're black in America, right? New England is a very white region, so you have, if you get out, you have a lot of opportunities to be exposed to that. But at the same time, it's hard for me. I've also traveled a lot. I've lived in different places in the country. And when people say Boston's the most racist place they've ever seen, I'm like, damn, like that's crazy because I've seen much more overt racism in other places. Racism that's a lot more stifling and harder to escape in other places than I've seen in Boston. That's just my personal experiences. But sorry,
the thing about Boston is everybody, like people who live there and then live other places, or like they all say like, yeah, Boston's what you think, and it's like to a T. They all say that, and it's like it can't be that like to me it's like it can't be that racist. But I think part of it is because it's racist relative to its political leanings. Yes. I think that's part of it as well.
Yes,
because there's racism everywhere, but like nobody says, "Oh, Maryland is racist." Like there's racism in Maryland, but people don't associate racism with Maryland, right? Yeah. So it's like people, but you talk to like athletes, right, who play in all different cities. All of them will say, "What's the most racist city you go to?" They say in the NBA, they say Boston, and they say Salt Lake City, Utah. Mm-hmm. Those are the two in the NBA. In baseball, it's 100% Boston. Even though, but that's what they say. They're like, "Yo, I'm in Boston. It's bad," and I'm just like, and it's the same across the board. And I think it's one of those things where it's just like, every city's gonna have racism if you're black. You're gonna have to deal with that everywhere you go. But it's also weird. Like we lived in San Diego, right? I didn't really experience any racism like that in San Diego, but it was also like no black people. And my wife and I were just like, we like it here, but like, when we have kids, we kind of want our kids to go to school with some people that look like me. Like, yeah. My wife and I do pretty well, like career-wise. So we're in a neighborhood or income bracket generally where there's not a lot of black people in most cities, which is why. But we're from a part of the country, Baltimore, D.C., PG County, where it's black as hell in all income levels, from broke to millionaires is black. And so that's where we're used to. And so we moved here because we were like, hey, we want to be somewhere where there's people like us. And we're thinking about moving again. But the only cities we're considering is Houston, which has a big black population. And I'm trying to convince my wife about Atlanta, which has a big black population in all income levels. Right? And so sometimes you can be like San Diego wasn't racist, but it was also white as hell. And so it's like one of those things where I didn't feel any racism, but I also, it was still weird not seeing anybody like me.
Well, that was
so the thing.
Go ahead, Avi.
So I was gonna say. So the thing about that with me is that when it comes to racism, to me, racism isn't what people necessarily say to you, like being a baseball player. And let me be real. Like, somebody getting paid $20 million a year, right? A couple times a year, they get a banana thrown at them in Fenway Park. All right, I'm sure that makes you feel sad, but to me, that kind of racism is something you see everywhere, where you have drunk white people, right? You're gonna get that. Sorry, that's how I feel.
But they say it's not, though. That's the thing. But they say it's not. Like the athletes say it's not. They all make a distinction about how Boston is different.
No, I get it. That's fine. I get it. And honestly, I can't necessarily speak for them, right? But
because every professional sport, I will say this, Javi, every professional sports crowd is predominantly white. Everywhere you go.
I'm going by my experiences on this, right? Like, and it's really like so Maryland isn't considered, like, they don't say the same thing about Maryland. Granted. I spent time in downtown Baltimore. You can't right where the Orioles play. You might not see racism where the Orioles at the game, but if you drive 5 minutes away, a 5 minute span of driving, you go from $1 million apartments and people brunching to row houses that look like if you walk out the freaking car, you ain't gonna see the next day, right?
Baltimore's a different kind of place, though. Like I had an ex who went to Coppin State, and I'm pretty sure that Brandon knows what Coppin State looks like. And my ex was telling me how they used to have.
We call it University of North Avenue.
And they'll tell you, like, there are certain places, like they tell you, like, hey, if you aren't from here, stay on campus. Like, you know what I mean? And it's funny, and Javi knows where Northeastern is, and the same rules should apply for Northeastern, because realistically, you fuck around and end up in Northeastern, you fuck around and end up in the hood. And people always
there's no hood. I grew up in that hood. I grew up in that exact hood. That you're talking about. And trust me, there is no hoods in Boston. There's very few hoods in Boston that have the same type of oppressed feeling that you will see in some of these row houses in Maryland, some of these hoods in Detroit, some of these places in Chicago. You know what I mean? Like,
but you're talking about systemic racism. That's different than what people are talking about there.
They're talking about people saying hurtful things to them.
They're talking about outright racism, like having to deal with it in your face.
And that's also part of the thing that the point that Javi brings up, that I absolutely agree with him when he talks about the idea of what racism is because, like, I always say, like in jest, I say that New England is Boston is the most racist place in the Union, but it's like they're hanging niggas in other places. Like, you know what I mean? Like, as you said, Javi, like, I may hear, like, and it's funny because to Brandon's point also, it's like, yeah, like, you know, the things that they'll say and like how they're undercover racist and things like that, it's a little different. But also, they know better, to say the least. Like, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Because as Javi said, Boston is Boston, as actual, like, Boston, not the place that people say like Worcester and Quincy and shit like that. And shit, even Quincy. There's a lot
of actual Boston, not Cambridge.
But here's a good question for you two, especially related to Javi's point.
Hold on, let me finish real quick, just because I want to make sure I don't forget this shit. But, like, there are a lot of things you're not gonna see in Boston. In Boston, like I said, the boroughs, for the lack of a better term, Mattapan, Roxbury, certain parts of Dorchester. Hyde Park, certain parts of Rosendale, that you're not going to see the kind
East Boston,
the kind of things that you're not going to see, just specifically because, like I said, they know better. Like, you know what I mean? And that's the part that I think is lost on a lot of people when they say,
yeah, they don't come around here. They're afraid to come where we are. And that's part of racism too, and that's part of what pisses me off about it, is because there's such great things in all of Boston that people miss out on. They come to Boston and they go to the Commons. They want to see like where the Boston Massacre happened. Like, oh, that's cool. Like, Boston has a lot of history, but there's a lot of dope shit where black people live, right? That can use some of these tourist dollars. That can use some of. What pisses me off is this, right? Like, you have a lot of black people that I love. I love my black people. They come up here for school. They go to Northeastern, they go to Harvard, they go to MIT, and they have their experiences here, and they leave, and they go like, yo, there's no black people in Boston.
So I'm gonna say,
but that's what I was gonna say. Hold on, oh man, that's what I was gonna say to you, Javi. Is that the difference here when this goes to the racism question? Is there's a lot of poverty in Baltimore. Trust me, I'm from Baltimore. I know.
Yeah.
But there's also like a strong black middle class and upper middle class in Baltimore. And there's no parts of Baltimore where you'll go where you don't see black people. You go to Orioles games, there's black people. You go to Ravens games, there's black people. You go to the Inner Harbor, there's black people, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you live in D.C., right, they call it the Chocolate City for a reason. Now, it's been gentrified, but it's still black people everywhere you go in D.C., in all the neighborhoods. If you live in PG County, there's people who got $700,000, $800,000, $900,000 $1 million homes, and they're all black neighborhoods. $800,000, $900,000 homes, all black neighborhoods, right? Houston, same thing. Here in Dallas, very similar, right? You don't hear that with Boston. What you hear is like what you say. You got the black people over here in these neighborhoods that probably aren't as good as these other ones where nothing's at. Not where nothing's at, where people don't go. And then you have the rest of Boston where all the tourists and everybody goes, and there's no black people.
Well, let me correct. I want to correct. I just want to correct the record real quick, old man, if I can. It's not that there aren't any black people in certain areas, right? There are black people. What we're trying to say is that there are more black people in Boston than most other people. Like there's a lot of black. If you come to Boston, there's black people every fucking place. Yeah. They're driving your bus. Right, they're walking down the street. They're working at the hospital.
And they're not like cooling.
If you go to any hospital in Boston,
yeah, and we're not talking about like random like spurts where it's just like, oh, there's a black people here, there's a black person here, there's a black person there. Like, we're like in Boston, we out here. Like, you know what I mean?
So does Boston have like a street where like bars are, like a popular bar street or part of town, that type of thing?
I would
Newberry Street. We have a couple.
Street,
we have Newberry. We have Commonwealth. We have.
There's like strips of bars and restaurants where people gather and hang out on the weekend.
Yeah, there's a lot.
If you go there on a Friday night, will I see a bunch of black people, or will I see a bunch of white people?
You'll see a bunch of white people.
You see a bunch of white people, because we don't do that.
But
we don't go to those.
But hold on,
we don't do that.
But that's what I'm saying to you, because you don't probably feel comfortable. Right?
But you know what?
Nah, but the culture is different.
Yeah, the Javi's point, it's a little different. But to what Javi was saying though, the drunk. I feel like one of the dudes from National Geographic. The drunk white person will not approach the black person with anger because they know what the fuck is up. Like me and Javi, a perfect example. When Javi showed up to my birthday party about 4 years ago, he was in a Care Bear onesie, right? And Javi was getting drinks all night. Like, you know what I mean?
I was downtown Boston in a onesie at a onesie bar crawl.
Yeah, and it's
going crazy.
And it's one of those. But honestly, it's one of those things where
Boston's lit, bro.
Boston's lit. Like, you go to certain places and it's like they're just happy to see. Honestly, it kind of feels like they're just happy to see people who don't look like fucking them. Yeah. To be honest,
and Boston's so small, and it's such a tight knit. Like it's tighter knit than people think. Like Boston, like you can't give. That's the thing with us. Like, we're all assholes.
Yeah. But
if you're on a train, go ahead. Sorry.
No. Go do your thing.
Like if you're on a train, if you're in public transportation, the thing that caught me off guard, like the first couple times I left this state, like I used to get out the country a lot because of my family, but like to a different state, like going to Florida or somewhere, all these places, right? What blew my mind was people telling me good morning.
Yeah.
What blew my mind was people giving me eye contact, and I had
that's a very southern thing.
Yeah, like when I went to
in Midwest and West Coast.
Brandon, how familiar are you with North Carolina?
I went to school in South Carolina. I've been in North Carolina a bunch.
So I had family who's from Boston who lived in Havelock, North Carolina, like Newburgh, North Carolina. And so when I went there, it was weird as fuck. When I went to the spot, which was the fucking which was the Walmart, and people were coming up to me like, "Good morning," and I'm like, "Fuck you mean good morning?" But
that's Southern hospitality.
Yeah, and it was so fucking weird. But like by day 2, because I'm all for like happiness and all the other stuff, I'm like, they're like, good morning. I'm like, hey, good morning. Like, and you know, and that kind of shit like really stuck with me because it's like, why the fuck are these angry ass fucking Bostonians? Why can't you just fucking say good morning? And it kind of annoyed me when I got back because it's like, yo, just be fucking friendly.
New York's like that too. Very angry.
Yeah. Yo, old man's the nicest Bostonian you're ever gonna meet.
Probably.
He be getting mad at Bostonians for doing Bostonian shit.
Hey, you know
Baltimore is this place called Fells Point, right? It's right on the water. It's like a bunch of bars and restaurants, right?
I've had brunch there actually. But
there's also clubs there like Moby's and other clubs, which are like black clubs. And then there's clubs where there's mixed people go, and then there's white people clubs, and they're all parked on the same street, and you're all hanging outside and see each other when you're walking by, and it's just like normal shit. On DC, there's a place called U Street, very popular. Yeah. But you'll see a rock bar, and then across the street is Ben's Chili Bowl, one of the most famous black restaurants. And then down the street is a black club, and then there's mixed clubs and bars all the way between. And when you walk up and down U Street, you see black people, Asian people, Spanish people, and they're all just mingling around. I don't know for sure, but when I've talked to people who've been to Boston or lived in Boston, they don't tell me experiences. They say the experience is not like that. They go there and it's like, where are the black people? I don't see any black people when I go out. When I go out with my white friends,
are they from Boston?
I know people that went there for school, and their white friends would go hang out at like strip bars, and there's no black people in the whole street, like just nowhere to be found when they go. Wherever they go out, they just don't see anyone
because
they don't come. They don't come where we are.
Like, but if I'm being honest, like Javi would tell you, like go to Slade's. Slade's is in Rochester.
Yeah.
Slade's
is right next to Dorchester.
Right next to Northeastern. The races mix.
No, like for us, like Slade's is where you go when like you want to go to a black club. Like they have live music, they have live jazz, they have like it's a place you go.
The races, and to answer your question, the races mix in colleges. And they mix in the professional world of Boston.
Yeah.
Like, that's where they mix.
Absolutely.
You know, like, that's where you see... And then, funny enough, if you go to South Boston now, since gentrification, like, you see a lot more little mixed babies. You see a lot of little mixed babies running around the place.
And you also see a lot of people who ain't with the racism shit because they're like, nah, we don't do that here because they're... in.
So are there middle-class neighborhoods, right, with, like, single-family homes where it's like, you know... Maybe
Dorchester.
60% white, 30% black,
Dorchester.
20% Hispanic,
Dorchester.
10% Asian, like a mixed neighborhood.
Dorchester. And what's funny about
Dorchester,
Dorchester is the most eclectic. Is that the right word, Javi?
I'm gonna say eclectic. I'd say Cambridge would be eclectic. I would say Dorchester.
I'm talking about Boston. I'm talking about Boston in general, though.
Boston, Dorchester. I would say Dorchester is probably the most widely diverse area.
Diverse. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Dorchester is the most diverse city in actual Boston.
Has one of the largest Vietnamese refugee communities.
Okay.
Large West Indian, large African.
Yep. And like, you know what I mean? And there are some
obviously Irish, large Irish illegal immigrant community of Irish people.
So, like, it really all depends
INS is out here arresting Irish people.
But you know what I mean? But there's also, like, let's take me, for example. I'll fight somebody. I'm not trying to get shot. I'm not fucking Luke Cage. But, like, if someone said to me, like, hey, I want to go somewhere where I see my people, I go, oh, yeah, you can. There's definitely a ton of places you can go here to see people who look like you. Like, you know what I mean? But you're not going to see this on the tourist guide. I always harken back to something Jamie Foxx said when he was talking about New York, and he was talking about New York food. And he was saying, like, yeah, if you don't necessarily want, like, when people go, like, with New York, like, oh, the food in New York is bad. It's like, well, where'd you go? Well, I went to Fridays. Well, yeah, nigga, that's why the food. Like, yeah, you went to Fridays. You went to Fridays in Times Square. No wonder.
Yo, Americans can't cook. Yo, where'd you go? Yo, I went to McDonald's.
Yo, New York is I'm glad you brought up New York, old man. That's a perfect example. Like, New York is very segregated in its ways, and it's being incredibly gentrified, like in Brooklyn, right?
Yep.
And like, there's really nice parts of New York where, like, the Upper East Side and stuff is like very white. However, there's nowhere you go in New York where you don't see niggas at.
Yeah.
Or Latino people. Like, no way. You cannot live in. There's no one who goes to NYU, right? There's no like black person who's from, you know, some other city who goes to NYU or goes to Manhattan College and be like, God damn, you know, where do black people live?
But if you go to Boston, you don't see black people. What I'm trying to tell you is, if you go to Boston, you don't see black people. You didn't go outside. Not to knock your friends, not to knock your friends, and nothing like that. You just didn't go outside.
But then I think that's part of the problem.
That's
it's just like, it's like this comedian goes. He goes, he was talking about he was in Canada, and he was saying, oh, I'm never gonna go to America again. He goes, it's so bad in there, and he was like, well, where'd you go? And he goes, oh, I went to Chicago and I went to Detroit. He goes, don't blame my whole fucking country because you got a bad fucking travel agent.
And what part of Chicago did he go to? Yeah,
Chicago's dope.
Yeah, Chicago's dope as hell. Like, I'm actually supposed to be going to a wedding in Chicago. In October.
Detroit, I don't know. I can't speak for Detroit.
You want to know what Boston is? You want to know what Boston is? You want to know what Boston is, Brandon? Boston's a small Chicago. Boston's like,
it's dirty.
It's very New York segregated though.
Yeah, it is. But there's a lot. But people don't really talk about Chicago being racist because there's a lot of fucking black people out there. And you go to Chicago, you can go to like Little Puerto Rico. You go to all these little places. You get your ethnic shit. That's the same thing with Boston.
There's really a nickel's difference between New York, Chicago, and Boston, because like you always have that racist Irish community in all three places. You have really fucked up cops in all three locations, and there's a lot that goes on with these particular places, but specifically because, like, you know, it's just like.
Oh yeah, I said Boston is 25% black. That's a lot.
Yeah,
Boston is and that's the greater Boston area, probably
25% black, 9%, almost 10% Asian.
Yeah, so that's a lot. That's 35 already, which is black people and Asian people,
and 6% other races, and 52% white.
But you know the funny
thing about that is diverse.
The funny thing about that is
it's very diverse, bro.
The funny thing about
and I think again that's the greater Boston area. I think those are numbers for the greater Boston area. The metro Boston area, the numbers should be a little bit different.
And I was thinking about this, like when they're talking about
black.
Boston,
this is Boston City. That's what they call it, Boston City.
Well, there's also what I was going to say was like you're also talking about Boylston Street, which they consider Boston. You're talking about downtown Boston, which they consider Boston, which is predominantly white. But if you're talking about actual like Boston, it's
this is Boston City. This is the census. So it says 52%. This is U.S. Census website. 52% white, 24.2% black, 9.8% Asian, 7.2% mixed race, and 19.5% Hispanic or Latino.
Yeah. And think about all those Hispanic or Latino people that actually consider themselves white in the census as well.
Yeah, and
you take that and you're going to subtract some of that white right there too.
And don't get me started on the people who they're not even questioning, and they're like, oh, they look at them and go, oh, they're fucking Spanish and they're really fucking Cape Verdean.
And then people of color are historically underrepresented in census numbers.
Exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I'm telling you, bro, you come to Boston. You come to Boston. Bro, I didn't. My first break.
How accurate is this? Median gross rent is $1,685. Does that sound about right?
Yeah.
That sounds low, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
That's
probably like I don't know. I don't know how they got that number because
median value for a house, an owner-occupied house, is $581,000.
That sounds low too.
That sounds low to me.
It is.
No, you know what it is? There's a lot of because that's why I don't like medians. It's only because it's skewed by like the outliers. So I'm pretty sure there's some crack houses out here that are going for like super low.
Well, median means it's the same amount over and the same amount less.
Isn't that the mean?
But like, I'll give you an example.
No, that's what median is. Median is when you take the average. So mean can be skewed because it can have drastic effects by any outlier. Median is like
okay. There you go.
The same amount below, the same amount more.
Well, let's look at like for example, where I live at. Where I live at, they consider Boston. I don't consider where I live at Boston. Like I'm close to the outliers of Boston, but they still consider where I live at Boston. And like the rent out here is cheap-ish, and like 16 is about what you'd expect to live out here. Like, you know what I mean?
For a one bedroom?
For a one bedroom out here, you may be able to get a one bedroom out here for what was I paying out here for a one bedroom? I think the one bedroom out here was 12 when me and Maria were living out here. When me and Maria were living in the one bedroom, it was 12. Like, you know what I mean? But it's also good considering that like I'm right next to a bus that can take me to a train station. I'm close to a commuter rail, which can get you like almost anywhere in the state. So there's a lot that goes on where I'm living at. But like if you want to live in like Boston, if you want to live in like Boston, 16 is like a bedroom.
Yeah, and you got to break it down in areas. So I'm looking at the average rates for one bedroom, and say downtown Boston is $3,355, and then the cheapest Woburn is $1,550.
What's that?
Woburn's out there, bro. This is Greater Boston.
Okay.
So that includes Cambridge and other areas.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But think about this. Boston is almost 25% black, right? I'm gonna compare that to where I used to live in San Diego. San Diego is 6.1% black.
Jesus.
Think about that.
Well, when I was in San Diego, I didn't see a lot of black people at all. Now that you mention it.
But that's what I'm trying to tell you. You come to Boston, you don't see black people. You did not go outside.
You didn't go to Boston at all. Like you
didn't take public transportation. You definitely didn't take public transportation.
That's for real.
Okay, do you see black people who are not servers or driving your bus?
Yeah.
Or
yeah.
That's what I'm just like regular black people. Not that they're not regular, but you know what
one of old man's best friends is a cop. I work at Pfizer. My wife's a nurse.
Like, you know what I mean?
That's what I'm saying.
Like you see,
but that's not what people say when they go there. So I think maybe it's a.
But where are they going though?
Maybe it's a tourist thing, like the tourist spots that black people don't show up to.
Yeah, but again, like it's like
our mayor is Asian, and she replaced a black female mayor.
Well, your governor's black too. Well, he was.
No, our governor's a white Republican. He was. Yeah. Deval
was a black guy. Deval Patrick.
Deval Patrick was black. What'd you say?
That dude sucked.
I like Deval.
I hated Deval Patrick, man. Fuck
really? Like the dude.
That dude.
Yo,
that dude was taking. Like I know that politicians take bribes, but that nigga was taking more bribes than a little bit. Dog, like I'm not gonna say
Boston is black, bro.
But think about this: in Baltimore, the average rent, the median rent, not average, the median rent is $1,100. In Dallas is $1,100, and Boston is $1,600.
Yo, those census numbers you looked at, what year was that? Was that the last census?
This was 2021. Yeah, the most recent one.
Yeah, so you got to think about this too. This is another thing about Boston, which is interesting. There has been a mass exodus of people of color from Boston because of the pricing. So this census most likely reflects a reduction.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was probably more than that a few years ago.
It was especially in the 90s when Boston was dangerous. Before gentrification, like I told you, bro, the only white people I saw was my teachers.
Yeah, for real. Like Boston was like there was a place in downtown Boston.
Boston's also one of the smarter cities. Boston has 51% people got a bachelor's degree. Yeah, damn.
Like dog,
whereas in Baltimore, 20%.
Dog, like
bro, the thing
Boston
in Boston, this is what you get asked first. What do you do? Yeah. What's your job? What
Boston is the mecca of fucking medical help. Like if you have
51%, that's insane.
Yo, look up how much college.
I heard Massachusetts has the best schools in the country, though, best public schools.
Yeah,
that's what I read.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Look up. Yeah, it is. Look up. We have bad ones, but the good ones are like so good that they
cancel.
They're ridiculous. Yeah. Look up the amount of colleges and universities in the greater Boston area.
Oh yeah, that's insane. Yeah.
It's ridiculous. It's nuts.
The only thing close is like North Carolina, probably.
Maybe.
Yeah, I know North Carolina is supposed to be like one of the. I know at one point in time it was like the party school capital of the country.
Well, Duke, North Carolina State, North Carolina Central, Wake Forest,
Duke and North Carolina,
NC State. Those are all within 6 miles of each other, 7 miles of each other.
Those are college terms.
I don't say this to be funny, but I would like to know what the sexual assault numbers are in that fucking place, because it seems like it would be high as shit, because motherfuckers.
There's so much colleges in Boston that the colleges have to arrange their move in and move out days. So
what's the most uppity college? BU?
No.
Harvard.
Yeah. Hands down, it's like
Harvard.
It's like
Harvard or Amherst. Oh well, Amherst is not Boston. Boston.
Well, Harvard's not really Boston, is it?
No.
Greater Boston area.
It's not.
Cambridge is the Greater Boston area.
That makes no fucking sense. That makes no goddamn sense to me, and I will dispute that shit up and down. Like Greater Boston area, but you have your own fucking police force. Like if Boston cops don't have jurisdiction in your place, then you're not fucking Boston.
No, just two. So you have Metro Boston, which is where we grew up in, the Dorchester, Roxbury, South End, South blah blah blah.
That's Boston.
And then you have the Greater Boston metropolitan area. So the Greater Boston area is about 500,000 people to 1 million people, and then the Greater Boston area is like.
No, you gotta start adding asterisks to where you live. Then I'm not counting you as where you fucking live.
No, you know me. You know what I studied. That's how I look at it.
And I understand.
So is Boston College, Chestnut Hill? Is that in Boston?
Chestnut Hill's not Boston.
Chestnut Hill is Boston. Chestnut Hill doesn't have its own police force, does it?
Chestnut Hill's not Boston. Chestnut Hill's probably like Newton or.
I swear I see BPD in Chestnut Hill, bro.
So is Northeastern? That's in Boston too?
Yes, Northeastern is definitely Boston. That's where I grew up. I grew up near Northeastern.
Okay. BU, I'm assuming that's in Boston, or it wouldn't be called BU.
They're Brookline.
BU is definitely in Boston.
Chestnut Hill is Brookline.
Chestnut Hill's in Brookline, and Brookline has its own police force.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So the Boston College is not actually in Boston?
No.
Boston College is in the Greater Boston area.
It's not Boston.
That's why it's called
Brookline.
Boston College.
It's Brookline. It's not fucking Boston.
You're really trying to own the Boston area.
Because it only matters in certain places. Miss me with that shit, man. Like, fuck you guys. Like, no, like, I'm not gonna be like, oh, I'm from Boston. Where you from? Worcester. Well, it ain't technically shit. Suck my grundle. It's not fucking.
Yeah, but we're not talking about that. That annoys me too when people from like Worcester and shit go out and be like, "Oh, where you from?" They're from Boston, and then they're whack, and then people be like, "People from Boston are whack."
If Boston
so how far is UMass? Like the
Boston police does not have
there's a bunch of UMass. There's a couple of UMasses.
So UMass main one, the Minutemen, the big school.
If Boston police does not have jurisdiction in your area, you're not fucking Boston.
All right. all of the UMass campuses are Minutemen.
Yeah.
What's the big one? Where the basketball team is and the football team?
Would you say UMass Amherst, maybe?
Yeah, probably Amherst. Amherst is where Marcus Camby played.
They got the most space. Yeah. And then UMass Boston. Do they play in Boston?
Oh, UMass?
Yeah.
No, UMass Amherst plays in Amherst.
Okay.
Yeah, Amherst. Yeah, is that far from Boston?
Hell yeah.
Yeah, it is. I used to date a girl who used to go to UMass Amherst.
That's like an hour.
What about where John Cena's from? West Newbury. Where's that?
You might as well just say you're from fucking New Hampshire.
West Newbury?
Yeah.
I never even heard of West Newbury.
Hold on. As a matter of fact, I will look it up now.
I haven't even heard of it.
Newbury.
That's where John Cena's from.
Boston.
West Newbury,
Boston is.
It's not Boston.
It's 44 minutes to downtown Boston.
That's not too far. That's still the greater Boston area.
No, it's not.
That's a suburb.
No, it's not. West Newbury to New Hampshire.
It's right across the river from New Hampshire. Looks like.
Yeah. You might as well just say you're fucking from New fucking Hampshire. Miss me with that shit.
No, it's pretty out there, but it's near
If it's 40 minutes from Boston, that's an exurb.
Yeah, it is. You can consider that. But thing is, Boston it's long. It's a long state, so South and North are much closer to each other than East and West. So
Is
like
Foxborough far from Boston?
Kind of. So
kind of. It's about a half an hour from me.
It also depends on what
Okay.
part of
20
Boston
minutes.
you're at. Like I can get to Foxborough in probably about 20 minutes, 30 minutes, probably the same amount of time.
Yeah, that has good highway access.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by Boston, like the whole Boston area. I'm so
What?
fascinated by it.
This is
Come through, yo!
ass.
It is so historic. Like anything you want to get into, I tell
Is
you.
Connecticut close to y'all?
It's about as close as New York is.
2 hours.
Like Hartford?
No. New York, Connecticut's like 3 hours.
New York is 3 hours. Connecticut's like two
York-
hours, 2.5 hours.
Because I know the
Connecticut-
Celtics used to
Connecticut
play
3 hours.
games at the Hartford Civic Center back in the day to try to get fans there. So I assumed it was close.
I think they practice. Oh no, they
practice in Waltham.
But now they moved it. They moved their
Connecticut's
practices
2
in.
hours and 11 minutes.
What's up?
The closest point to Boston is either 2 hours and 26 minutes, or it's either 2 hours and 11, 26, or 47 minutes.
Yeah, you hit Connecticut. I drive, motherfucker. I'm driving.
And I have motherfuckers who come to my job every day like, oh, it took me 3 hours to get from fucking Connecticut to Boston.
Well, yeah.
Because I'm
Yeah,
driving
what
from
time
Boston.
it is? It's 10:54 at night. If you're doing the map, there's no traffic probably compared to
Yeah,
like
it
a
is
normal
fucking-
time.
Yeah, it is
But it depends on what part of Connecticut. Like if you're like
These motherfuckers are
in
dropping
West
off
Connecticut,
fucking, like,
it's gonna take you 3 hours. But if
these
you're in
motherfuckers
East
are
Connecticut,
dropping
it's
off
gonna
fucking
take.
like random shit that need to go to patients at like 3 o'clock in the morning, and it's still taking them fucking 3 hours to get here.
So the people in Boston often just, do you go to New Hampshire, Rhode Island, Maine all the time? It's just like, yeah, we're going to Rhode Island for the
We have
weekend
people
or
who
whatever.
commute to
Yeah, you
to
definitely do
downtown
that.
Boston all the time. Like they commute to
Yeah.
from New Hampshire to downtown Boston for work.
And you work, yeah. You work.
Really?
Like people work, yeah. Hell yeah.
Absolutely.
A lot of the people at my job are
Do
from
they
New
have a
Hampshire.
train that goes from New Hampshire to Boston?
Commuter rail hobby?
Like a commuter rail? Yeah.
They should have a. I'm pretty sure they do.
Yeah. And like it's
So they get to live there with no state tax and they come into the city and work.
yeah.
No, I mean, yeah, but you still have to, and you still pay the taxes. And the thing that sucks, if you lose your, New Hampshire has horrible benefits. Like Massachusetts is super liberal and
Yeah.
crazy benefits and family leave and all this other stuff and like, expanded
Medicaid.
unemployment. And the thing is, if you live in New Hampshire, you don't get any of that. So I know people that say people that got laid off, like a company got shut down or laid off a bunch of people. The people that lived in Massachusetts are straight. But the people in New Hampshire are like in New Hampshire, you have to show proof that you looked for a job every day. For instance, right? In Massachusetts, it's like whatever. Massachusetts,
California, when I lost my job, kept me on unemployment allowed me to learn an entirely new career.
yeah.
Till I got a job that paid double what I was making in California.
That's exactly how I got into college. It was after, during the recession. Yeah, it was called Section 80 or something like that. And you sign up, you enroll in school, and they give you unemployment for 2 years.
Yeah, Maria. It was funny because when I went out with unemployment, when I went out for my back, they approved me to go out for workman's comp because it happened at work. But
Right.
Maria was like, if they want to dispute this shit, she was just like, fuck them, just go to school and live off unemployment for a while until they get their shit together.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like, there's a lot that goes. Like, I talk a lot of shit about Boston, and like, it does really fucking annoy me that a lot of shit that they do. But there's a lot of fucking benefits of like living here, and like how
I love the state, bro.
and like Javi said, like there's a lot of fucking there are black people out here. The problem is, like Javi said, is like if you're not going to the right place, you're not gonna see fucking black people.
And it's not just Boston. So I live in Brockton. Me and my wife moved to Brockton after we got married. Brockton is if you know boxing, you know Brockton. Rocky Marciano's from.
It was
It's
the city of
town.
champions. City of Champions. It was once the City of Champions. It was also once the shoe capital of the world.
Yeah.
There's a lot of history that goes.
Yeah, it's a working class town, and you come here, it's super like white people smoking blunts. That's what got me when I came here. I was like, yo, white people smoke blunts here? Like they roll up. Like I came up like, yo, and it's is like as far as like diversity, like it definitely has issues with crime and all the other stuff. It's starting to get gentrified, but like it's like and there's a lot more of Brockton like in these areas like than people think of when it comes to Massachusetts.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's part of the thing. Is just like it's like when people go, "Oh, I went to New York and I got robbed." Nigga, where were you? Like, do you not look up the places you go before you fucking go there? Like, you know what I mean? That's fucking stupid. Like when me and Maria go do we do HomeAways, we look up where we're going first. Like when people like there was a segment on Joe Budden where he was talking about how people were going to the Heights, and it was like, why would you do that? Did you not look up where the fucking Heights were and what the fuck was going on? And somebody was like, oh, they probably just looked up that it's close to this train, it's close to that train, and da 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 da. When me and my buddies, and I'm pretty sure everyone here has done the, oh, I'm gonna go stay in a hotel with me and 4 of my friends, two people on each bed, one person on each bed, and then one person, and like, you know, 2 people on the floor. And like, we were in like the hood. Like, you know what I mean? But we knew better than to like run our fucking mouths in places that we know nothing about. Like Javi's talked about. Me and Javi did a whole fucking episode about like, you know where the fuck you are before you start running your fucking mouth.
Facts. And that's the thing too. Boston, we fight.
Yeah,
that's another thing too. So a lot of people not from Boston. Like when I was doing Uber, I noticed a lot of people not from Boston when they come to visit. They're a little intimidated by the reputation, whether it's racism, whether it's like they'll get punched in the face, like little things like that. Like you know, it's true, bro. Like
I went to Boston. The last time I went to Boston, I got off the plane. And I hopped on the train at the airport and took the train in the downtown. And I got off the train and just walked around, got some food, walked around.
Oh, and if you Doug, if you like seafood, whoo, you're like.
Well, you can't tell me about seafood. I'm from the best seafood state in the country.
No, you are.
And their seafood is a little bit more seasoned than our traditional seafood. A lot more seasoned than our traditional.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, if you want seasoned seafood, then like, yeah, like they're from. Y'all are like the home of like Old Bay. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yes.
And that's the thing too. So we get the super fresh North Atlantic seafood, and not the trip. I'd say like pound for pound, I think our seafood is better than the Gulf, just because I think the North Atlantic has tastier fish. That's just my opinion. But I think you guys make y'all stuff better than we do.
Yeah, because they're
Maryland ain't nowhere near the Gulf. Maryland gets North Atlantic seafood too.
Oh, Maryland! I fuck with Maryland seafood.
That's what I'm talking about. I'm from Baltimore.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Texas. Okay,
no, I'm talking about Baltimore.
Texas ain't got no good. Texas has barbecue.
I'm from Baltimore. We got the best seafood. Maryland has the best seafood.
Boston probably has.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
The Massachusetts probably has the freshest seafood. Right. Baltimore probably has the best seafood.
Baltimore is one of the few. Baltimore, certain places in Florida. Those are the
New Orleans got good seafood too.
Especially New Orleans, like places on the Gulf and those places. Like those are the places. Those are the only places I would buy seafood. Like that's it. New England, like I can't. I was in the Midwest. I didn't eat fish the whole time I was out there. They took me to Red Lobster. I'm like, I'm good. I'm good.
Can I tell you that I can't wait to go to New Orleans and just die from eating?
It's the best. New Orleans is the best. It's the best food. It's probably my favorite food city that I've ever been to.
Like, they were like,
by far.
They're like, hey, do you want? Hey, we have this thing. We holler, yes, I'll try that. It's like
everything in New Orleans is delicious.
Like,
don't sleep on Chicago's food culture, bro.
Oh, I'm not sleeping. I just know personally that like when I want, like I just can't wait to go to New Orleans and just is like, oh,
it's different.
What happened to Mark? Oh, you didn't hear? He died from food.
Yeah, he had one too many po' boys.
Po' boys, one too many. Nigga, I'm gonna, I feel like I'm gonna get off the plane, smell the food, and have a heart attack.
You go to the original Popeyes, and it's like not like any other Popeyes in the country because the original one's there.
Bro, I gotta get off this conversation. I know we recorded, but I gotta go.
This has been the Old Man Way Show. I just kind of felt like this needed to be an impromptu thing. I thought it would be 20 minutes. It ended up being 44 minutes. And as always, be excellent to each other. Peace.
Damn it, Wade.